energy in the room here. I always say you can know the spirit of a congregation by their praise and worship.
Hallelujah.
And praise Yahweh. We almost are raising the roof off of the building. And we see what real praise is compared to what you heard yesterday, right? What Elder Orley said, the truck has moved out. So the power of prayer, praise for that. I'd known about this trip. We set it up several months back, and I always try to pray to Yahweh to have a message for His people that He wants, a specific message. So the message that I feel Yahweh inspired me today is called Community Living, Sanctification, and the Wilderness. Community Living, Sanctification, and the Wilderness. So I was here last time in the Philippines in 2018. So it was coming this January, next month, will be exactly 6 years. It went really, really fast. And many things have changed during that time. And I've been talking about the wilderness for a long time, but now the wilderness is here. So it's very different. The same as the underground congregation. I've been preaching about the underground congregation, a course on that for just about 20 years. But now that the underground congregation is here, we see it in a whole different way. So I'm putting a whole new course together on the underground congregation because we're living it. So I don't know about you, but to me, it's exciting when now you hear the words and it's like, it's alive. You know, we're living in that time. And I say, it's very interesting. When you look in the New Testament, in almost every book in the New Testament, there's an amen at the end of it. You know, so be it, right? And that amen shows it's the end of the book. But there's 3 books in the New Testament that do not have an amen. And the book of Acts is one of them. Because the book of Acts is not finished yet. And we are writing chapter after chapter as we go along here. So, you know, the restoration work that we've done from Jerusalem and the Hebraic Roots Bible and starting these communities, this is all being written in Acts 29, Acts 32, Acts 33, which is all part of the book of life. So forever, the things that you are laying the foundation for will always be there for generation after generation to come. So I was saying in the message I was given to the youth, you know, one of the principles in life to have is always do everything with the end in mind. So when you do things with the end in mind, there might be some things you don't do, which is good. Because you might think, what is the end of this? Nah, this isn't really worthwhile, I'm not going to do it. But when you're doing things with the end in mind for Yahweh, it gives you vision to continue and not to quit. So it's something we want to make sure we do in life. So I've always known from the beginning that somewhere down the line, Yahweh's people would start living in community because that's what the kingdom is all about. The kingdom is nothing more than a big community. And when we look in the book of Acts, right, we see, what do we see in Acts 2 and Acts 5? I'm not going to go there right now. But we see the early believers, the first thing they did was move into community. Because it's very different. And you know it now as you're living here. And you went through maybe some of the growing pains. But we see that in a community, you have to sacrifice of yourself. You have to sacrifice of your wants for the wants, the better wants of the community. And in the Laodicean era, there's just people sometimes that don't have that. Never mind community, there's people out there that won't even be in a congregation. You know, they like the freedom, they say, to this week come here, and next week go here, and next week go something. But think about that. If you're just traveling week to a different place, who are you serving? You're serving yourself. Because in order to be a servant in the congregation, you have to be planted there. You know, you have over here somebody who's taking care of the music, and you have somebody who's taking care of instruments here, and you have somebody who's setting up the hall. How could you give an assignment to somebody that's not going to be here? If you don't know if they're going to be here this week and maybe next week somewhere else. So it's a very selfish thing when people don't want to be committed to a congregation, and it shows something. Because the body of Messiah, that's what we are, is one big congregation. So if people do not want to be planted, what happens to a plant that doesn't have fertile dirt? It dies. You have to be planted or you're going to perish. So community living is really what the kingdom is about. The kingdom is just one big community. In order to have a community led by the Ruach HaKodesh and to be blessed by Almighty Yahweh, there has to be two elements. The first element is judicial order, right? So sometimes in Western society, people think it's money. And I say, that you can give somebody $1 million. It doesn't matter if you have all the money in the world. That is not going to make your community. As you know, your community are not beautiful buildings and gold floors. Your community is the spirit within you and what you're bringing out. So that's the first thing you have to have. If you don't have judicial order, you'll never have a community. And I've seen it happen. I've actually been in communities, one that we started in Israel in 2009, that fell apart very quickly. Because people had their own ideas. People didn't want to surrender. They didn't want to surrender their own, self-promotion for Yahweh's judicial order. So you have to have judicial order or it will splinter up and fall away very quick. And the second thing, which is also important, is you have to have unconditional love, first to Yahweh and equally important to each other. There needs to be that unconditional love. Mark 12, starting in the second part of verse 28, it says, "What is the first commandment of all?" And Yeshua answered, "The first of the commandments is, Hear, Israel, Yahweh our Elohim is Yahweh Echad. And you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and all your strength. This is the first commandment." Comes from Deuteronomy 6. "And the second is like it, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is not another commandment greater than these." So that's got to be the foundation when you're in community living. The other thing that is beautiful about living in community is the law of synergy. It's really wonderful because we all see it. We all see by ourselves we're all limited. We're limited with spiritual gifts, right? There's nobody that has all the spiritual gifts. We're limited with finances. We're limited with time. We're limited in so many ways. But yet when you put synergy together, wow, it's amazing. Like I said, for me, one person can't lift the table, but 2 people can lift 3 tables, and 4 people can lift 10 tables. And it's amazing what we do when we put together our talents and we work together for the kingdom mindset. It's absolutely amazing what we can accomplish. So synergy is an amazing thing, how Yahweh works, to be able to multiply things 3 times, 10 times, or who knows. Beside Yahweh, our greatest asset in life is each other. And the Laodicean that wants to jump from place to place every week, he doesn't have that. He doesn't have anything. He just has himself, his own desires of that week, and there's no end in mind. There's no goal. There's no vision. There's no fruit to be born. They're not even thinking about that. It's just a matter of what feels good at the time. And where does that spirit come from? That spirit comes from the enemy. That spirit certainly doesn't come from Yahweh because there's no discipline, there's no self-control, and most of all, there's no fruit. Because the fruit is what we're going to be blessed for in the future. So Yahweh has been preparing since 2015 us living together in community all over the earth. So it would be neat if it started just here in Philippines, right? And if you were doing it, but it's all over. It's all over the place. And even in Western society, Europe and America, the brethren want to live in community. Everybody wants it. And they're watching how you're doing it because you're the he-goat before the flock. And they're looking at your example and they're saying, wow, those people look happy. Those people look, really filled with joy. I want that. And Yahweh's people all over the earth want to do it. And I think we're hitting a phase now where many, because like I said, right now, maybe 10% of the brethren live in community. Most of them don't. But many of those want to join. They want to be part of it, and it's just spreading like wildfire because it's a kingdom principle. So since 2015, Yahweh's been working this miracle, inspiring his set-apart congregation all over the world to start communities and living together in peace and harmony. Psalm 133, a song of ascents of David. Behold how good and how pleasant it is for brethren together living in unity. We just sang the song, right? And how wonderful it is. There's nothing that's greater than when the brethren are living together in unity. There's no greater feeling of peace in your soul when you're living together with brethren in unity. And some of the brethren here and the elders were telling me that they don't always have access to the internet, so they don't always know like what I'm writing maybe at the time or maybe a sermon, but that Yahweh is inspiring them the same. And then when they read the update or they hear the sermon, they're given the same message by the Ruach HaKodesh. And that's Yahweh's Spirit working around the world in all of us. And how wonderful that is, right? What a feeling it is that that's the way the Father and the Son is. That the Father doesn't even have to say it, and the Son is already doing it. And you know why? It's not hearing the word, it's having the same Spirit. And what that means is that if there was a need here, if whatever the need could be, there was a person that fell, or you saw that something, maybe they were cold, it's the Spirit in us that all of us would think, we need to help, we need to do this, we need to do that. Because there's only one Spirit, right? And that's why people misunderstand, they think Yahweh is Trinity. But there can't be a Trinity. And that's why, again, the name of Yahweh is so powerful and important, because in Hebrew, everything has a name. Every single word has a name. You know, every word comes from a root. And the name is important to everything, right? So, when you look at that, every person's name in Hebrew means something. David, my beloved, right? Itzhak, she left. It all has meaning to it. And Yeshua, Yahweh salvation. Yahweh, they all exist in one. But when you look at the Ruach HaKodesh, that's not a name. It doesn't have a name. It's the wind. It's Yahweh's Spirit. So if it was a being, it would have a name. But it doesn't. So there's two beings from the beginning. There's Yahweh the Father and Yeshua the Son. But how are they one? Through the Spirit. And I equate it in a way that we can understand that it's like the mind. It's how Yahweh thinks, right? It's how He conjures things. So it's like, think about it. Everything you do starts in your mind. And I was thinking about this recently. Isn't it kind of neat that you can talk in your mind, but words don't come out? How do we do that? I don't even know how we do that. How do we talk in our mind without words coming out? But it's the Spirit of Yahweh. And that's what makes us one. Because you know what? Your mind, without your mind, what would you be? You'd be a zombie. You'd be a robot. You know, you'd be nothing. But your mind is what thinks. Your mind is what creates. Your mind is what tells you what to do, right? Your mind tells you if you're hot or cold, if you're hungry. Your mind tells you love. It tells you everything. And think of that mind that you think every day with. Yahweh and Yeshua have the same one. It's not two minds. It's one mind. It's one Spirit. They're thinking the exact same way. And that He takes that Spirit and He puts it in you, and you, and you, and you, and me, through our baptism. And then we start to think the same exact way. Wow. But it doesn't happen automatically. I say it's like a little seed that starts out just like when you put a plant in the ground. You know, you start with the seed, and you come the next day, and it looks the same. You come the next day, it looks the same. Then after about a week, maybe 10 days, ooh, a little plant's coming up, right? And then after another week, wow, it's getting bigger. And then, like it says, then greenery, and then a full ear, and then the fruit. And it's so exciting to see it grow. And that's what happens to us after baptism. But it's not only us individually. We are living proof that this is true, because what Yahweh's inspiring in my mind is inspiring in your mind, and we're being one. And that's why, you know, when I see somebody that thinks something different, whether it's, you know, the rotating Sabbath day or something like that, you have to think to yourself, well, if we're all one, and none of us are getting that, what makes you think that this is coming from the Ruach HaKodesh? And this is the way that we can keep ourselves in balance. Because if we're getting something that's so contrary to the Scripture, and nobody else in Yahweh's congregation is getting that, how can we think it's Yahweh? And that's why being Echad and being in community, it's safety there. You know, I always say every year at the Bible school, Yahweh teaches me a profound lesson in my own personal life. And one was, don't leave the camp. There was a year we had where somebody, I didn't know before they came, but in the middle of the program, they already had something else planned that they had to leave for like a week or 10 days in the middle of it. So they came and they started and everyone was ikad and we were one. And when these people left, and then they came back, it was like they were totally different. Because everyone else was growing in the spirit and they actually went backward from where they went to. They were learning the wrong things and they never got back into it. It was like totally different. And that's what happens when somebody leaves the truth. I don't know if you ever had a believer that left and maybe you met them a year later, 2 years later, and you're like, wow, I don't even know this person. Their language is different. Their belief system, sometimes they even look different. And it's like the Spirit of Yahweh leaves. You know, they quench that spirit. So what a blessing we have to have each other. And when we're praying for each other, it's helping, it's coming in. And that spirit, it's like electricity, right? So if you had one little solar panel, right? Better than nothing, but you could probably do a little light. But if you had a solar panel that was 12 kilometers long, wow, that can light up a city. So each of us is like a solar panel. Each of us, Yahweh is using to light up the place here. So praise Yahweh for that. And I say, it's not a miracle for brethren to live together. I mean, people live together all over the world. The miracle is to live together in unity. And in a world where churches all over the world are breaking up, and we know even within the true congregation of Yeshua, we saw that the remnants of that church broke up. You know, Church of God First, and Sacred Name groups, and all of them, and splintering, you know, because people going the wrong way. And here it is in a time where the Laodicean spirit is relevant around the world. Instead of splintering, we're getting more unified. We're growing, you know, and it's working. And other people are seeing it, and that's something that makes people want to be part of it. Because they say, I've never seen anything like this. How does this work? So anybody that tries to say, oh, judicial order is bad, or this and that, they're just being led by a wrong spirit. They're just selfish people. Because again, it's not dictatorship. Judicial order is voluntary and reciprocal. It's like in a marriage, you know. Yes, there's judicial order where the husband is over the wife in authority, meaningly, whatever happens, he's the guy responsible. Because there's always somebody that's going to be responsible. But in their calling, they're equal. They both have you know, spiritual gifts that they can use. There's an equality there in marriage that happens. You know, and in a marriage, the husband and wife, they make the decisions together. It's just the husband is the one responsible for the outcome. So that's where it's there. But it's the same way in the congregation. You know, judicial order is there to protect the people. It's not there to rule over the people. And again, it's voluntary and it's reciprocal. Matthew 26 and verse 39. This is when Yeshua is in the Garden of Gethsemane. And he says, and going forward a little, he fell on his face praying and saying, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not as I will, but as you will. Right? Even Yeshua, the only way that him and the Father have this oneness is that Yeshua totally surrenders to his Father. And there has to be trust there, not just faith, but there has to be trust. You know, and Yeshua trusts because they have the same spirit, they have the same mindset. So he trusts anything the Father says is only for the good. And he's going to do everything. John 5 in verse 30, Yeshua says, I am not able to do anything of my desire, but as I hear I judge, and my judgment is just, for I do not seek my will, rather the will of him who sent me. And that's in the community, right? Everything we want to think of, everything we want to do, has to be what's going to be better for everybody. What's going to help everybody in the community, not just myself. 1 Corinthians 12 and verse 26. If one member is in pain, all the members suffer with it. If one member is honored, all the members rejoice with it. So if somebody in the community, if they were to say, wow, you know, maybe one of your youth here, you know, he did something and he's being honored by the town because he did something, everyone is honored. He comes from this community. He comes from the high community, right? And you're all blessed by that. Because when one is honored, we're all honored. And when there's sorrow, when somebody is hurt or there's death, we all suffer together. That's the way community works. Because we're one spirit together. Community living will only work if all the members are living with a kingdom mentality daily. It's not something we just listen to in a sermon or in a message. We have to live in that kingdom mentality. And you know what's great about it? Yahweh lives in eternity. Time is something that was created. And you know from school, what is eternity? It has no beginning, no end. So it's a line, infinite line, right? No, nothing this way, nothing that way. It just goes continuously in both directions. And in eternity, like when somebody says, well, who created Yahweh? The problem is their mind is living in time. Because as humans, everything is time. From the day you're born, you have 26,181 days, right? Everything is time, you know? We have a conference like this, you know, and it's time. How many days? And then it ends. Because we're living in time. But time is of creation. Yahweh lives in eternity. So what did he do? If he did all this plan in eternity, then all the evil people didn't make it. They'd be there for eternity. So what he did was he said, you know what? I gotta make this so the ones who refuse the kingdom, that we could, you know, not keep them in their misery forever. So it's not a punishment to go to the lake of fire. It's a blessing from Yahweh. It's people that are willfully choosing Satan's way, and they would live for eternity in sorrow, and they'd be suffering, and they'd be unhappy. So Yahweh says, I don't want people living that way. So you know what? It's like somebody that, I don't know if you ever had this, like somebody who is dying, and they fill their days, and they were a good person, and they're suffering. Maybe they have cancer or something. You see them suffering, and you're not praying anymore for them to be healed. You're praying for Yahweh to just take them. And then once they die, you feel like at peace because you don't want to see them suffer that way. And that's the way for the ones who don't make the kingdom. That the lake of fire is that their memory will be no more. And when we look in Revelation 21, it says Yahweh wipes away every tear from our eyes. What are those tears? It's our family members who didn't make the kingdom. So in the kingdom, if you had 5 children and 2 didn't make it, you'd only remember 3. You're not going to for eternity remember your friends and relatives that didn't make it. So it's an act of mercy for Yahweh to take these people and that willingly choose not to be part of it, to just take them out. Because if, like I said, if not, they would do that for eternity. But time is a creation. So if you think of this line of eternity, goes that way forever, this way forever, time is just a piece of eternity. Yahweh created this little piece of eternity for 7,000 years, and he created that and he called it time. So now we're almost at 6,000 years of that timeline. And then we'll have 1,000 years of restoring all things, and then we go back to eternity. So when Yeshua returns, it's going to be major changes, but the real change happens after the 1,000 years. That's when we go back to eternity, and we don't really know what that's going to be like because we haven't lived that way. So whatever you focus on becomes most real to you, and we've lived in time, so our mind is focused on time, but we have to get that kingdom mentality. And you know what? Once you're living in a kingdom mentality, it really doesn't matter how much time is left, because we're already living in eternity. You have eternal life living in you. So if you die today, you'd be resurrected in a second for eternity. So as long as you've been baptized correctly, and you're laying on of hands by an elder of Yahweh, you have the Spirit of Yahweh living in you, you should be living in eternity. You shouldn't worry about time, because time is something that is a created thing that's going to end. And even in Revelation, there's a point, like it says in Revelation 10, there'll be time no more. You know, that'll be it. It will fulfill its destiny, and that will be the end of time. So you have to live this way. You have to live in the kingdom mindset, which is a mindset, like I said, of abundance. It's not a mindset of scarcity. You know, so if you're the piano player and a new family moves in, and the lady is also a piano player, you're not like, oh, they're going to take my job. You're like, no, we just doubled. We just doubled our resources. And remember synergy, you didn't double it, you may have tripled it. You may have quadrupled it, right? Get your mindset to think on abundance, not scarcity. Scarcity is Satan's way. Satan wants us to think that way. We want to think on abundance. That's the kingdom mindset. So it's got to be a lifestyle choice. It can't be simple, empty words on a paper. And unless each of us humble ourselves and serve our neighbor as ourselves and seek Yahweh with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength, community living is only a fantasy. But praise Yahweh, you are a great testimony to me being with you, and a great testimony to the brethren all over the world, because you're doing it and it's working and you're happy. And it makes me so happy to come here and see you filled with joy and see you singing the way you do and see how happy you are. Because Yahweh did this, right? You couldn't have done it. Who could have done this on their own? None of us. But together, look what you accomplished. You accomplished something together through the Ruach. And wow, how great that is. Praise Yahweh. And this is a little piece of the kingdom of Yahweh. You are showing the people out there, right? Because the doctrine may or may not be able to be understood by people, but they can understand this. They can understand there's this group of people living there. We're not really sure who they are. You know, sometimes they think we're Jehovah's Witnesses. You know, I was thinking of going out in mission fields with a shirt, no Jehovah's Witness. Because they always think, are you Jehovah's Witness? Even when we were in Jordan recently, somebody asked if we were Jehovah's Witness. I was like, oh, I know Jehovah's Witnesses. I gotta get my hands on them, you know? But it's like, no. But they don't know who you are, but they know what you are. They know you're living here, they know you're happy, they know when there's trouble, you're helped, they know you're all living there, they can't understand it. But one thing they know you're different and they know it's working. So what a testimony to Yahweh for that. So I want to go over a couple of principles here as part of the message, then we're going to move on to sanctification, and then the wilderness, because this is the first part of the wilderness. Unless you leave society, you can't go to the wilderness. The wilderness is not downtown New York or downtown Manila or downtown any city, Tokyo, you know. The wilderness is the wilderness. It's a solitary place. So if you want to be part of what Yahweh's doing in the end time, you want to be part of the kingdom mindset, you got to go to the wilderness. So the first principle is you have to have the kingdom mindset, like we talked about. That claiming our inheritance, it's not about joining a particular church or denomination. It has nothing to do with religion, like we said. Religion is not a word that's in Scripture, it's relationship. But it has everything to do in understanding that we are citizens of the kingdom established and ruled by Yahweh. And as a citizen, you have rights. Remember Paul in the Bible? He used his right as a citizen. They were beating him, and then they didn't know. He says, hey, you beat me without a trial when I'm a Roman citizen? They got nervous because they knew, uh-oh, we're in trouble. You don't do this, it's against the law. So we have to boldly be able to know our rights as a citizen of the kingdom of Yahweh. One of those rights is we have the ability to go to heaven anytime. So if you're in trouble, something happens, you get put in prison, you know, somebody's, you know, whatever, you can immediately close your eyes and start praying that you're in heaven. You're at the throne of Yahweh. And that's something that other people don't have. Other people need cherubs to bring the prayers to Yahweh. As His children, we have the ability to go there. So here it is, Yahweh could be in a really important meeting with the 24 elders, and they're discussing, you know, that war is going to be coming, and and this is going to happen to Israel, and they're discussing what they're going to do, and all of a sudden there's a, Heavenly Father, one of your children is here. Bring him in. Bring him in. Oh, okay, that's going on. Gabriel, go ahead, take care of it. This is what happens. We've had some of our elders that were put in prison. And by miraculous intervention, they got let out, you know. So we're in that time, we're ready for that fifth seal to open up, the seal of martyrism, and we don't have to be afraid of that. Because, you know, the apostles and the early believers, they looked at the greatest way that they can show appreciation for Yeshua was to give their life up the same way he did. So we're not like the Muslims, you know, we're not out here going to put dynamite on ourselves, you know, and blow ourselves up and something like that. We're living sacrifices. We're out living, giving our life as a sacrifice to Yahweh. But if it came down to it, that we had to be a martyr for him, boy, that's a special class of people. You know, when we look at the congregation in Smyrna, you know, beside Philadelphia, they're a very, very special class of people for all eternity. Because that's an honor and a badge that they can wear for eternity, that they were willing not just to give their life as a daily sacrifice every day, but to give their physical life. And the Apostle Peter was so humbled by that the only request he asked was, crucify me upside down, because I don't deserve to be crucified the way Yeshua was. But one example we have by those that went before us. That's why I say, if you haven't read the book or you haven't read it in a while, please read the book, The Gates of Hell Will Not Prevail Against Her. It's an awesome book. It's a book that shows our history. It's a book that shows where we are today, because where we were is who we become, and who we are today is who we will be in the future. So we want to do that together. So you've got to have that community mindset, right? We have to understand we're citizens of heaven, and we have to understand what that means. It's a real kingdom. It's not a fuzzy feeling in your heart. It's not like something, an analogy. It's a real kingdom. When Yeshua returns, he will literally return to the Mount of Olives. It's in Jerusalem. And he will reign from there for 1,000 years, and we will be with him. We'll be with him and ruling him. So I said this in the community. Our model has to be the sum is worth more than the individual pieces. Right? So if you have 7 plus 7 plus 8 equals 22, the sum will always be worth more than one piece. So each of us are a piece, right? And like it says, Yahweh gives us gifts according to our ability. So maybe one of you is an 8, maybe one is a 5, maybe one is a 7, but together we're always going to be more. That's the synergy that comes from there. Psalm 24. The earth belongs to Yahweh and the fullness of it, the world and those who live in it. So it's understanding that collectively we can do things that we can't do individually, but it all belongs to Yahweh. So for a believer, you don't have to feel guilty when Yahweh blessed you financially. You know, like we had Brother Bert here, gave his awesome testimony. And if it wasn't for this property that he donated, you couldn't have done what you did. So if Yahweh is blessing you financially, don't feel guilty. Just use that for the kingdom. You know, that's something that is very rare in the congregation to have. Like it says, not many wise men now are called those of noble birth. But there are some that Yahweh does bring in sometimes where their financial efforts can help in all different ways, and we're thankful for that. All part of the kingdom mindset of working together. 1 Corinthians 7 and verse 30. It says, of those weeping is not weeping, and those rejoicing is not rejoicing, and those buying as if they did not possess anything, right? So we can buy, but we don't possess. And that's the kibbutz. You know, really, when you think of the kibbutz, the real kibbutz motto in Israel is that nobody owned anything. So the house you lived in, you could live there for 30 years, you can't sell it because you don't own it. You could give it to your child if they want to stay in the kibbutz, right? And they can give it to their child. And that's like in the Bible, the inheritance of the tribes, right? You're not allowed to sell property in Israel because it all belongs to Yahweh. But you can give that property to your children to live in after you. But in a kibbutz, if your children didn't want to live there and you died, it would be given to somebody else. You can't sell it. You know, so I don't know what your rule is here or whatever, but because everything belongs to Yahweh, we don't own anything. You know, we could use it, we could have somebody else use it, but you're not allowed to sell it. And like I said, there should be no guilt involved. If Yahweh blesses you financially, just use it to help somebody else. The kingdom of Yahweh is a family that each of us is adopted into from the corrupted world of Satan, and we're taken into the kingdom of Yahweh as sons and daughters and kings and priests. Revelation 5:10. He made them kings and priests for Elohim, that they shall reign on the earth. Are you thinking about that? You know? Levite wasn't really priests. They became priests as a shadow. But when they came out of Egypt, they weren't priests. You know? Every head of the household was going to be a priest. Yahweh made Israel kingdom a priest, but they failed. So then Yahweh took Levi and temporarily put them into that priesthood. It was a temporary priesthood that now is fulfilled, right? But it wasn't a priesthood that was there forever. But he has made us kings and priests. So right now we're ambassadors to bring that word to his kingdom. But think about it, when he comes, are you ready? You know, I look at like the royal family in Great Britain. And when you see like a child is born, right? Like when King Charles was born, or then Prince William. From the day they're born, they know someday they'll be a king. So they are trained from the day they're born for that time. And what they do is actually, so that they'll be servants, in their kingdom, like Prince William and these people, they actually go in the military. They serve in the military, they serve in helping in hospitals and this different things. So they serve because they don't want them to get this attitude, I'm the king, everybody serves me. They want to get the attitude, no, I'm the king, now I have a greater ability to serve you. He wants to be greatest among you, let him be your servant, right? It's not like the Gentiles who lord over their people. So we want to think about that, but are you ready for it? Are you ready to become a king and a priest? That's what our whole life now is for. Life is a test, and it's to prepare for that. So that's the training that I've done. That's what Yahweh has had me to do for the last 25 years, training people for that ministry. But you have to think about it. Like I said, think with the end in mind. Philippians 3 and verse 20, for our citizenship is in heaven, from where we also wait for a Savior, the Master Yeshua Messiah. So, spirit does not have color. It doesn't have flesh. So it's kind of ironic that you think about it. Whether you're African, or you're Asian, or you're American, or you're South American, or you're Australian, or wherever you're from, doesn't make a difference. Because we may look different, right, all over the world, but we have the same spirit inside of us. So people ask sometimes, Elder Don, is it okay to vote? I'm like, well, number one, demonocracy is not of Yahweh, so we shouldn't be voting anyway, because Yahweh is the one who chooses, But number two, why would you vote? You're not Filipino. You just happen to be put Filipino skin on you right now to do the work here. The same way a cherub could come and look Filipino, but cherubs aren't Filipino. But if you see a cherub, I saw a cherub not that long ago in Saudi Arabia, when I got there. And he looked almost like a Middle Eastern type guy, or Arab looking guy with a head, but that wasn't the way he really is. Cherub is spirit. So a cherub could look like anything. So why would you vote in the Filipino election when your citizenship is in the kingdom of Yahweh? You're an ambassador for that. Can you imagine the ambassador from America to the Philippines, and he comes here and he votes in the Philippines election? Who's he representing then? And that's the first thing with an ambassador. You can't have divided spirit in you. You're an ambassador for your country. You don't come, that's traitorous. When you're sent somewhere as an ambassador for your country and you join that country, now, you might be there to serve in that country, but our citizenship is in heaven, like it says here. That's why would we vote? Why on earth would we vote in the election? We're here as ambassador to Yahweh. That's what we're doing for. So the kingdom of Yahweh, it has to be body, soul, and spirit. In Luke 17, 20, and 21, Yeshua tells them, the kingdom of Yahweh is among you or within you. And he's talking about himself as the king, that he's there. But I always say this, if the kingdom of Yahweh is not within you, meaningly, if it's not part of your whole essence, if it's not your heart, your mind, your soul, and the strength, is not toward the kingdom of Yahweh, then you're not in the kingdom of Yahweh. It either has to be in you or you're not in it. It's got to be your top priority in life. Because, there's 8 billion people out there, and who knows how many true believers are there. There's at least a few 100,000 of them. Maybe there's a million. I don't know if there's even that many. But that's not even 1/10 of 1% of the people in the world. So if Yahweh called you, instead of the 5 million other Filipino people that are out there, and you don't put that as the highest priority of your life, what is he going to do? He's going to replace you. Parable of the talents. It's real simple. That yes, it's an honor, and and we thank him every day for where he put us, but we also have to produce. And that's why he's given each of us gifts. And you have to use those gifts for ministry, to produce something for him. And that's what it says. When Yeshua comes back, he's going to separate the sheep and the goats. He's going to find out who's producing and who didn't. And the ones that produce fruit, he's going to bless you with reward. The ones who didn't, the little they had will be taken away from them. So we want to make sure we're producing for Yahweh's kingdom. Second principle is community living is not a welfare state. Like I said, you have to live in a kingdom mentality where everything you're thinking about is for the kingdom. And sometimes in third world, though, because people have lived their whole life without things, they get the mentality of welfare state. So we've had this happen in several places where, I talk to the elders about kibbutz and starting community, and oh yeah, this is great, we're going to do it. And they go back, they talk to the people, and they say, yeah, we're going to start community living, and we're all going to live here, and we'll have a piece of land. They're like, well, that sounds great. I want to be part of it. And then they say, well, you need to, if you have money or something, you need to give it into the community so that, oh, I got to give something? Oh, I got to pay, $200 for my hut, whatever it is. And then say, I'll think about it. So that's not a kingdom mindset. So it's like if they can get something, they want to be part of it, but if they have to give something, they can't. And in the first kibbutz in Israel, I've said this many times, when it started back in 1910, the motto was, give everything you have and only take what you need. Kibbutz Levi near the Sea of Galilee. It's a religious kibbutz. Elder Orley was there. Maybe a couple others might have been there also. But in that kibbutz, when they started, it took more than a year just to clear the rocks. These people were living in tents, and a family of 5 would eat 1 egg a day. Cut the egg up. That's all the food they ate. And they sacrificed. Just like I said, Elder Rulli and his family, and maybe some of the others, sacrificed to start this place over here. But they're the patriarchs and the matriarchs. It's the women and the men that sacrifice to make that. But it's not a welfare state. Yahweh's kingdom is not a welfare state. And, I thought about that recently. Sometimes maybe that could be misunderstood because the word welfare is actually not what it really means. Just like communist. Communist, we think of today, when I say communist, what do you think of? Russia, China, right? But really, communist, the word came from communal living. Communist is really everybody living together in community, but it just doesn't mean that today. The same with welfare. Welfare literally means the welfare. It's to be looking that everyone is cared for. That's really what welfare means. But what did it become? It became where the state just gives money to people. A matter of fact, in America, there's actually a department called welfare. That if you're really poor and you don't have money, you're on welfare. The government's giving you food to have. So technically, it's really not a bad word if you're using the real word from it. But what it is today, where it's just a handout. We don't need handouts. And I've had people tell me that before, that, hey, we're not looking for a handout. We're just looking to be able to take care of ourselves. And that's why, from the head office, we try to do that. We try to help the people, to give the money for the farming or whatever, so that the brethren can care for themselves. But it's got to be that way. Because like the old expression, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach him how to fish, you feed him for life. And now we fished. We caught 87 fish the other day. If we didn't have service, it would have been 153. If we would have waited a little longer. But it was fun. I mean, they were really biting out there. It was like, wow, all these fish that was coming. So now I know how to fish. It was the first time I fished in my life. Thank you very much for that blessing, me and Mariah. So it's not a welfare state. Like I said, judicial order is voluntary and reciprocal, and you have to think with that. You have to think of not what the kibbutz can do for you, but what can you do for the kibbutz. And I say this to people sometimes when, because we have a lot of people all over the world now thinking about moving to a kibbutz, and as I travel, people say, "Can I talk to you for a few minutes? Yeah, can you give me some advice? I'd like to, go. Should I go to this place or should I go to this place or whatever?" And I try to explain to them, because as I say, okay, you can go to this kibbutz in Africa. The only thing is there's no electricity. They're living in huts with dirt floors. I don't know if that's something I want to go to. Is there another choice? But it shouldn't be the choice when you're choosing to go in community. Shouldn't be the one that's more convenient for me, right? It should be the one that you can give the most to. So it's the one that, I'm very musically inclined. I can play the piano, I can play the guitar, and this kibbutz doesn't have anybody there that can do that. Or, wow, I'm a teacher, I'm a school teacher, I've been teaching all these years, and this kibbutz doesn't have a teacher like that. So you have to think of what your gifts are, and that should make you decide where you want to go. Because that's the point of it. It's using your gifts for that community. It's not what community will I feel the most comfortable with, because it's not going to work. Then it's gonna fail. It's got to be, where can you be the best productive. We're one body, but many members. So when we live together in community, it's think about it. When you're living on your own, it's like not having an arm or living blind, whatever. When we come together and all the members, because there's a pinky out here, there's an earlobe. One of you is an earlobe, right? One of you is a nose. So we come together and then we form a full body where we can have the smelling and the tasting and the seeing, right? But we need to come together. So 1 Corinthians 12 and verse 4, there are diversity of gifts, but there's one Spirit. But one and the same Spirit works all these things, distributing separately to each as it wills. Even as the body is one, and has many members, but all the members of the body, one, being many or one body, so is Messiah. Verse 14. For also the body is not one member, but many. So we have to think about this. We have to think about where in the body are there needs? Are we looking for that? Are we looking, when we see maybe there's a young family with multiple children that are having a hard time caring for them, are we thinking, hey, maybe we could babysit for a night? When we see one of the brothers or the sisters being injured, are we thinking, hey, let me ask him if he needs help over there, cleaning, whatever. We should always be thinking, how can we be servants? Next principle is organization is the key to success. So there's a saying, he that fails to plan, plans to fail. So you just don't do this. You don't just say, hey, I like that idea. We're going to make a community. Everybody show up this Sunday at 8 o'clock and we'll get started. And then you get 100 people here and it's like, what do we do next? I don't know, let's just wing it. And then all of a sudden it's like the next morning, like, hey, something, we haven't eaten yet. Oh, we didn't bring food, nobody planned it, well, I got a little bit of food. Hey, there's nowhere to cook. Oh, we didn't bring any pots and pans? Oh, it's starting to rain. We didn't bring any covering. Hey, how about sleep? I don't know, we're winging it. He who fails to plan, plans to fail. So in a community, kibbutzes in communities, it's like little cities. And it's the same way in Israel. We've lived in several kibbutzes. Loved it. Best time in our life when we were living in the kibbutz. And like I said, they're like little cities. So a community is like a town, and it has to be cared for. So just some of the committees, and everyone may not have all of these, but some of them are like administration committee. You need a committee that's doing the administrating, that's setting everything up, that's planning where the houses are going to go. And not just today, because you may do all this planning today, and a year from there you grow so much, you're like, oh, why did we build that building there? We should have built it over here. Or you're doing it. So you have to have administration. You have to have a business committee. Because how does your community continue unless you're making some kind of income? So you need a business committee that's thinking about that. That hey, what we can do? We can start producing cotton over here, or we can produce rice, or we can sell this. And then you need finance committee, because with most businesses you need some kind of money. So the finance committee, not just for the businesses, but also for widows, for families, for food in the community, for Shabbat, whatever it is. You have to have a finance committee that's taking all the tithes and that they're allocating it. Then a care committee. You have, your widows and maybe handicapped people, whatever it is. You need a care committee. There needs to be a committee that is periodically going to all the members, making sure everybody's okay, because sometimes people might feel funny telling you. They don't want to say it. So you need a care committee that's actually looking at every single person in the community. I said this before, but in the first few years of Congregation of Yahweh Jerusalem, most of what we did for probably close to 5 years was just helping brethren get food. Sometimes there were brethren in Africa that didn't even have one shirt to wear. And we were shipping in boxes. At that time, it wasn't so expensive. Me and Petra were getting boxes of clothes and shipping them here 1 month, shipping them here another month, helping people with food. We were having situations where whole congregations, there was famine going on. And I can say today, praise Yahweh, we have none of that anymore in the congregation. If something comes up, a famine or something, we're able to immediately handle it. So praise Yahweh, that has to be cared for. Because what kind of witness are you if you're a community, even if you have thriving businesses, if you have 3 widows that aren't cared for. So we want to make sure that we're caring for the most vulnerable in our community. Livestock committee, if you have chickens and cows and all that. Housing committee, where the houses are going to go people living. Education committee for educating your children. Because like I said, if you have a kibbutz and you're sending your children to public school, you don't have a kibbutz. That's no wonder. The kibbutz is for the next generation. And the public school system is going to destroy your children. So you have to have your own educational system. It's that simple. Agricultural committee, for growing and everything. Security. You need a committee that's taking care of the security, making sure, depending on where you are, it could be more dangerous, less dangerous, but making sure there's security in the camp, they're watching everything and whatnot. And a doctrinal committee that would be by the elders for doctrine. Everybody needs to have assignments, and like I said, everyone in the community should be doing some job. Even the children. Getting them a job, maybe putting out flyers on the seats during service or whatever. Get everybody involved. Get the mindset from when they're little that you serve. We're coming to serve. Everybody does something. We all work together. So like I said, there's no welfare state. We're working together. The 4th principle is learning from the Amish. It's a brand new course. I'm doing it in Bible school for the first time on the Amish. And what we could learn from the Amish. And again, the Mennonites were part of the original Anabaptists. They were part of that originally came to the U.S., and the Amish came from there. Amish were not Sabbath keepers, but Mennonites were Sabbath keepers. So they were the original Philadelphia congregation back in the 1500s and 1600s, the Anabaptists. And the Amish descended from them, and they kept. Still today, they ride horse and buggy. They don't have any of the mechanisms of the world. They don't have electricity. They don't have these things. And they're very ingenious, though, how they do a lot of stuff. Even without electricity. They actually do have washing machines and dryers. They use by gas, like propane gas. So, very interesting to learn from them, but there's a lot of things that we could learn from them. Jeremiah 6, the beginning of verse 16 says, "So says Yahweh, stand by the ways and see, and ask for the old paths, where the good way is, and walk in it, and you shall find rest to your souls." Ask for the old ways, right? Are we asking for the old ways, or are we looking for the new ways? Because the society today is completely controlled by Satan. Right? So that's why I say when you look at things like Facebook, that's now been changed to Metatron. Come on. You can tell by the names of these things. Why would any brother or sister want anything to do with that? Why would you want anything? Just look at Zuckerface. Some people say he's not even human. Why would you want anything to do with these people that they're evil? What they plan and what they're doing. And what they did during COVID. That even doctors that were medical doctors, Dr. McCullough in America, the top heart surgeon for 30 years in America, and they're saying he's given false information and blocked them on Facebook. And who's giving the information? Mark Zuckerface? He's the one you're going to listen to. He's got no medical background. He's got no background whatsoever. Well, he has a background, but it's not a good one. But that's the point. Why would you want to, when you're part of something, you are supporting it. When you're a member of Facebook, you're supporting that. And I can tell you right now, Yahweh did not make Facebook. And it's not even Facebook anymore. The same with that used to be Twitter. Elon Musk is another person that they say he might be part mechanical. Certainly looks it. But he spends $44 billion to buy Twitter, which is an idea. $44 billion for an idea. What does he do? What did he buy? He bought the name. That's the whole thing. It's like someone buying McDonald's and changing it to Joe's Hamburgers. Can you imagine? But he changed the name. Why? To X. To X. Because what do they put on the people in the end time? They put a tau. They put an X. A mark. An X. And he changes the name to it to X. Wow. You can't make this stuff up. You can't make it up. And that's why Yahweh says, stay away from that stuff. Stay away from it. Social media is not of Yahweh. It's used only for maligning and whatnot. And we don't need that kind of stuff. We want to go back to the old myths. With people, one-on-one, in the community, you get to talk to people one-on-one, the way that it was meant to be, right? That's the way it is. So, principle number 5, I'm going to go over this very quickly, is internal squabbles. Because as human beings, squabbles meaning like arguments. Arguments will come. Unfortunately, like Yeshua said, offenses will come, but woe to him who brings them. But I always say the best way to solve community disagreements is to have protocol and avenues to stop them from happening in the first place. Right? If you have the proper protocol, you could stop a lot of the arguments. So, let's say there's a dispute of somebody built a house over here and, they want to put 3 cows on their porch, and the neighbor over there, the cow is ripping up the neighbor's whatever. And so, what is he doing here? Well, if you have protocol, the animals stay in a certain area. It would solve that problem before it starts. The more protocol you have, the less that'll happen. And again, if we go to love your neighbor as yourself, it'll really help. So the best way to solve these problems is to have the protocol that they don't happen in the first place, but again, we'll still have some. And the Matthew 18 process, we have to use that. In a community, if you have a problem with a person, go to that person first. Before you go to the elder, go to the person. Sit down quietly, try to work it out. If you can't work it out, then you could bring witnesses. If you can't work it out, then you come to the elder, and the elder will have to, mediate in that sense. So if we use Matthew 18, again, it will solve most problems. And like I was saying the other day, well, one of the principles of life, learn to understand before being understood. So if there's a problem between 2 brethren, no matter what it is on your side, before you give your side, before you want to say how it's affecting you, listen to the other person first, because it'll help you. It'll help you share your side of it. Because if somebody is saying, well, the only reason I'm doing it is because of this reason and I have no other way, your defense may be different. So listen first, with open ears, listen and honestly listen, and then if the other person does it, most of these things can be solved. And praise Elohim, in the beginning when we started 8 years ago, there were more disputes, private disputes in the different communities, and they still come up from time to time, but they're very minimal now. So praise Elohim for that. So basically, those are some of the principles to help in community. And getting into the second part of the lesson, though, is the wilderness is here. Like I was saying, can you imagine? It's hard to imagine. The same way it's hard to live in eternity when we're a product of time. But can you imagine that we might be in the last 7 years? We just went through a Shemitah. We went through one before that when Yahweh showed us. And that's when we keep the next Shemitah, it might be the time that Yeshua's returning. And again, I'm not prophesying. It could be 2. It could be 2. I don't know. But it could be 1. There's a lot of things, the message I gave last week and put online. It could be, or a couple weeks ago, it could be that we are literally entering this last small time period. So that's why being in community in the wilderness experience, we really got to embrace it. The Bible talks about all the time. And we already went over this, like I said, I do it in the book, the Gates of Hell book. But for most of the time in the New Testament, the brethren were in the wilderness. The only time they really left the wilderness was when the Philadelphia congregation started, because they were to take the witness to the world. And Yahweh opened up a door that was never opened before. When the Philadelphia congregation started in the early 1600s, what happened when they went to the New World? It wasn't Babylon at that time, America. It was the New World. It was the first time ever that believers had freedom to preach. And it was right after the discovery of the printing press. So before the printing press, there was no Bibles that were printed. Everything had to be done by hand. Now, Yahweh inspires Gutenberg to make the printing press, and right after that, what happens? He has these people come to the New World, the Philadelphia congregation, and he opens up a door that no man can shut. They start printing Bibles. They start going freely. There was no laws anymore saying, this is illegal, you're going to get put in prison. So, praise Yahweh for that. But that's the only reason why they left the wilderness, because of that job that's been going on up until now, but now is the time to go back to the wilderness. Yahweh does everything in the circular. So what was the beginning of that? We didn't know it 8 years ago. I had no idea why Yahweh was inspiring this. But all of a sudden, worldwide, it was happening. And wow, look at it now. So we have to get that wilderness mindset. And vaccine passports was only the beginning. I pray that every one of you, because Philippines was, it was a really hard place during COVID to be. But don't think they ended it, because they planned that. That wasn't a mistake. Before COVID ever started, they knew what they were going to do to you. They knew they were going to lock you down. They knew they were going to bring a pandemic. And the Philippines government, you know it, they don't make their own decisions. Whatever's told to them by the World Economic Forum, they go along with. Whatever America says, they go along with. So they don't care about their own people the same way no government does. So if they say lock these people in their house and don't let them out, they're going to lock you in your house. If they say force a vaccine on you, even though it'll kill you, they're going to do it. So you know it. We've already lived it. I don't have to try to prove to you that we're in that time. But Yahweh has given us now just a short period of time, because He didn't have to stop those vaccine passports. He stopped it to give us a little bit of time to prepare. That's the only reason He stopped it. And if you don't take advantage of this time, shame on you, because the wilderness is here. So this is the time. It's almost like if there was a hurricane or a horrible storm that came, and you knew this was like a Cat 5, it was going to be the worst that ever happened, and it starts to come, and you see it doing all this trouble, and then all of a sudden you hit the eye, and you have some time where it stops for a time. But you know it's not over. So you better hurry. You better get that wood. You better put it back on your windows. You better do this, because you know pretty soon it's coming again. And then it comes again, the second wave of it. And I can tell you, I don't know exactly what the second wave will be. I believe it's going to be part of also bringing the cashless society. But I can tell you, whatever it is, it's going to make COVID look like nothing. COVID was a simple test. It was a test to bring the operating system and implanting it in people, which they did to probably 80% of the people. But it was also to test the lockdowns and see what they had to do. And when the next one comes, it's going to be worse. So, but the thing is, now that we live through it, we don't have to fear it. I have no fear of it. We understand. We just have to, we know now Yahweh blessed us to see where we need change. What we didn't have because we couldn't go out to stores and whatever and hospitals during COVID, now we know what we have to do privately. And the more we come out of that society, the better it's going to be for all of us. So we have this tiny bit of time, and only Yahweh knows what that is. It might be a year, maybe it'll be 5 years, I don't know. But it's a small amount of time. It might only be a couple months. You want to know something? I'll tell you, right before I came here, I got a very, very distressing email from one of our elders in Africa. And he told me, because in Africa, we still have brethren living in UN camps. In Africa, mostly in Kenya, in Ethiopia, and Sudan. And he said, the UN already told them, they must take a chip, or it's mandatory. Or if they don't take the chip, they will not be able to get food and supplies anymore. So I was like, well, keep me posted on this. This is really, really important. Because if they're starting to make it mandatory in one place, they're testing, they'll do it in other places. Certain places already, in the last few years, they've done bank failures, where in certain places they've taken people's money from the banks. And it's already started. They're testing these things, and now, like I said, they already started this FedNow system where all transactions in countries now are going through the Federal Reserve of the national banks, no more privately. So we're moving fast. Yahweh knows the time, but we can't sit still. We have to make sure we're moving ahead and getting all the things you need. We have that Joseph Storehouse and the 7-point plan. Make sure that everything is there for that, because the wilderness is here. Like I said, vaccine passports just the beginning, and we already saw them. You couldn't go to work. They were going to fire you if you didn't get that vaccine. You couldn't go in a hospital. And soon it'll be even worse. So the wilderness is here, and we have to have our on-the-job training. Wilderness is leaving society being off the grid, which we have to get, dependent on Yahweh only. Many times in scriptures, Yahweh sends His servants to the wilderness to sanctify them away from the world and prepare them for their soon coming job. So that's one of the major things. Because we know from the Garden of Eden, we know that Satan is the God of this society. So Adam was meant to be, he was meant to be the leader of society, the purpose of man. We know that he abdicated his position to Satan, and since that time, Satan has been the leader of this society. And now, though it's full, before it was part, but now he controls everything. There's really no aspect of society, his society, that he's not controlling. And if we look in the Bible, the people that had the most important job, when there was major change that was coming, what do you got when they took the people to the wilderness? You look at Moses, right? He has Moses born in Egypt. It's like being born in the world. Then after 40 years, right? 40 being the number of overcoming a trial. At 40, what does he do? He goes to the wilderness, and then he's in the wilderness 40 years, and then what does he do? He goes back to the world to take other people out. So it shows you, in the wilderness, it's not that we stop Matthew 24. It's not that we stop. There'll be a time where we'll stop, but it won't be our choice. It's going to be where Yahweh makes it, where we can't do it. And even then, we'll be underground doing it. It just won't be open. But we see that, like Moses' life is kind of like a pattern for our life. We start in the world, and then Yahweh calls us out of the world, and then we have to be sanctified from the world, but then we always have to be still doing Matthew 24 and going out. Luke 1 in verse 80. Luke 1 in verse 80. It's talking about John the Baptist. And the child grew and became strong in spirit, and he was in the wilderness until the day of his showing to Israel. So think about this. Like Moses. Moses, why did Yahweh take him to the wilderness? Because there was a major change coming. So that's the point of it. The same way, really, the first one that really went to the wilderness was Adam. Because the purpose of man, you clearly see, Yahweh created not just one man in the world, he created them, male and female. So there were people that Yahweh created around the world, and then what does he do? He takes one man, Adon, which means man, out of the world, and he brings him to Eden, to the wilderness. It's a type of wilderness there, and he trains him. But he fails at his job. So the same thing would happen. Then he has to take Noah. He takes him out of the world. What does he do? He puts him on the ark. It's very interesting that when Moses is born, it says the mother took him and put him in a basket, right? And put him on the river where Pharaoh's daughter found him. That word for basket is the same word used for ark for Noah. It's the only 2 times in the Bible that that's used. So it's like he put him in that ark, so to speak, to sanctify him. He even says she put mortar and pitch, just like Noah did with the ark. So it's really interesting that you see the same pattern that's there. So Moses had to go. Why? Because something earth-shattering was happening. It was the first time now that not a person. Yahweh already worked through people. He already worked through Abraham. He already worked through Noah. He already worked through people individually, Isaac and Jacob. But now, for the first time, he was going to take a nation. He was going to make a nation out of these people, so he had to take the guy to the wilderness first, because he's got to clear his mind. He's born in Egypt, he's born in all this paganism, so Yahweh's got to take him out and clear his mind. The same with John the Baptist. So John the Baptist, because he has there's something really big happening. From the creation of the world in Adam until then, 4,000 years, this has never happened, where now Yahweh is going to redeem man back to him through Yeshua. So it's a major world event that's happening. And now he's going to create not a physical nation, but he's going to create a spiritual nation. So he had to take John to the wilderness to purify his mind from Satan's system. Because how could Moses or John teach people the way of the kingdom if the only thing they know is Satan's system? Right? We're corrupted by that system. When we look at the Apostle Paul, Galatians 1:15 through 17. It says, but when Yahweh was pleased in having separated me from my mother's belly, the Apostle Paul is talking, and having called me through his grace, he revealed his Son in me, that I might preach him among the nations. Immediately I did not tell it to any human being, nor did I go up to Jerusalem to the apostles before me, but I went away into Arabia. He went to Mount Sinai, right? And returned again to Damascus after that. So the Apostle Paul, because he was going to do something that was new. He was bringing a message about grace that even the apostles didn't fully understand. About Yeshua fulfilling, the sacrificial system and these things. So what did he have to do? He had to bring them to the wilderness. Wow. All places to bring them to Mount Sinai from that point. And even Yeshua himself. Where does he go before he starts his ministry? To the wilderness. Mark 1, 12 and 13. Mark 1 and 12 and 13. It says, and the Spirit at once drove him, Yeshua, out into the wilderness. And he was there in the wilderness 40 days, right? Number of overcoming. Being tempted by Satan, it was with the wild beasts, and the cherubs ministered to him. Right? The cherubs ministered to him. So even Yeshua himself. So I hope you're understanding, because I think a lot of times people misunderstand and they think that we're going to the wilderness just to run away from what's happening, so that we don't get caught by the beast power, or that, we're fleeing from harm. That's not the point of it. We're going to the wilderness to purify ourselves. We're going to the wilderness to prepare, because like I said, the wilderness isn't the end. We don't want to stop in the wilderness, because we already know what happened to the Israelites, The promised land is the end, but the next step after the wilderness is Mount Sinai. So the wilderness is an important road, and there's no other road to the kingdom but the wilderness. There's no back road. There's no other way. You have to go through the wilderness. And here we are. And the kind of wilderness we're going through, because through Scripture, Yahweh took a lot of his servants through a type of wilderness. Many people. We could talk here for hours about it. But there's only two people as a nation that went through a physical wilderness. One is Israel, right? 40 years they went through the wilderness as a physical nation. And us, the spiritual nation now. Because we are going to finish what Israel failed at. Yahweh is a redeemer, he's a restorer. And part of the restoration ministry is to restore what was lost in the wilderness. Because, like I said, wow, you think of almost 2 million people being there, and only 20 and above went to the promised land. That's not good odds. It's really not good. But now we're going to overcome that. We're going to accomplish what they didn't accomplish. So our wilderness experience, it's not running from the beast power just to save our flesh. It's going and preparing. It's losing our flesh. It's dying to the flesh every day. It's learning that kingdom mentality. It's living together like this so we can lose the things we need to lose, our anger, our pride, our self-righteousness, and getting ready for day one when Yeshua returns, that we're ready. Because if not, we might not be there. I say, if you look throughout the last 6,000 years, many people in the white throne judgment will make the kingdom of Yahweh, many won't. But Yahweh doesn't judge a second grader the way he judges a college student. So throughout the time period, many people didn't understand things, and their bar will be much lower for entering the kingdom. In the end time, the bar is much higher because we know everything. Everything's been revealed. And that's why in this generation now that we are living in, there will be more people lost than any other generation before us. The Bible's very clear that beast power brings the mark. And whoever takes the mark goes to the lake of fire. And the whole world took the mark. Wow. And now the mark is here. The mark doesn't have to do with lying or committing adultery. The mark has to do with simply going to the store and buying something. Buying and selling. Putting your money in the bank and taking your money out of the bank. That's all it has to do with. And yet we're at that point now. And that's why I say, the QR code, that's all part of the mark. It's all part of it. It's like when you get products, you get milk. And for years, you're trying to open the top of that milk, and it's always breaking, and you can't pour it. And then it took thousands of years for someone to come up to put a little screw top on the top of the milk, right? Wow, why didn't they do that 1,000 years ago? And you screw it off, now you don't spill your milk anymore. But you want to know something? It's still milk. It may be improved, but it's still milk, and that's the thing. They may put a chip in us or not, but the beast power, the mark, is already here. That QR code is enough. They don't need any more. So will they improve it? Maybe, maybe not. But the QR code is it. So they'll start it with that. That's all you need. There'll be no money. Just use your... Right now in supermarkets, that's what they did. It used to be, I don't know if they have it here, but you go to the supermarket, they have a sale. This week, tomatoes are on sale. They're only 59 cents a kilo. And then they start, you have to be a member. You don't get the sale unless you're a member in the supermarket. Okay, how do I be a member? Well, just sign this paper. We'll give you a little card. And now, when I'm checking out, I give them my card, and I get the discount. Well, now, you can't do that anymore. Now you can only become a member if you got the QR code. I don't have that phone. How do I become? Can't do it. Well, can I do it another way? Nah, we don't give paper anymore. You mean I can only get the sale if I have the mark? That's right. All right, I'll pay the full price. It's not worth my salvation. So don't you see how they're conditioning you little by little that you can't live your life without that stupid thing? People sleep with it. It causes cancer as it is, right? And as they're going up 5G, and now they already have 6G, they'll go to 10G. That alone is going to kill half the people, the cancer rates of that. But man, learn to live without it. You know, Bill Gates is not your friend. The guy who's making the technology for all those things. And unfortunately, I've said the same. Most of that AI technology comes out of Israel. That's where the majority, because Israel's already now, they've already been sold out to the beast power. Another thing of prophecy that we see fulfilled there. And that's why the day of Jacob's trouble is now upon us with that. But it's all part of it. This is why Yahweh is taking us to the wilderness. This is why He's bringing you here to protect you, to get you away from that stuff. You know, you don't need Facebook here in a community. You know, you don't need X here in the community. We're getting away from that. We're purifying our minds from that. And like I said, we're not running to protect the flesh, but we're going to a solitary place for preparation. This is our preparation, our last preparation as ambassadors to take that job in the kingdom of Yahweh when He comes. So Yahweh always took His servants to the wilderness when the world was on the cusp of an extreme biblical change, and He had to train and prepare the leadership to bring this change to society around them. So that's what He's got to do, because how can we do it unless we get purified when we change from there? Exodus 3 and verse 18. Exodus 3 and verse 18 says, "And they shall listen to your voice, and you shall come in, you and the elders of Israel, to the king of Egypt." He's talking to Moses here. "And you shall say to him, Yahweh, the Elohim of the Hebrews, has met us. And now please, let us go a journey of 3 days into the wilderness, and let us sacrifice to Yahweh our Elohim." Let us go a journey of 3 days in the wilderness, right? 3 being the number of resurrection. So that's the point, you know? It has to deal with the resurrection. We have to go to the wilderness to be able to serve Yahweh. Revelation 12 and verse 6. "And the woman fled into the wilderness," right? Here we are in the end time. That's what it's saying. The woman, the congregation, they're going. Where are they going? To the wilderness. Where she had a place. Where she had a place. So there's a specific place that Yahweh has for at least 144,000. Not everybody will be there, and that's okay. Wherever His place is for me, that's where I want to be. So if I'm not part of the 144,000, I'm not going to try to get there. Because that's what's going to happen. When Yahweh takes His people to Selah, that's the place He says, you know, in the wilderness there in the Middle East, on the other side of Israel, the other side of the Jordan River, the eastern part of biblical Israel, people are going to hear about it, right? They're going to hear, hey, they're saying Yeshua returned to this place over there, and people are going to try to get there. But what does it say? When they say He's in the desert, don't go. Because commercial Babylon, you're told you have to leave. Come out of her. So now it's your choice, right? I'm telling you, get rid of your dumb phone. You know, that it's not a smartphone, it's a dumb phone. Get rid of that. Get rid of Facebook. Get rid of that. You're commanded, come out of that. That's your choice. You could listen or not, but that's your choice. But if you listen and you do come out of it and you prepare yourself, then Yahweh will take you to the special place He has. You don't have to worry about getting there. So if I don't wind up there, that's fine. That means I have something else I need to prepare. So He's going to put me, you know, that's why I said empowering belief. There's nothing that happens in my life that Yahweh doesn't do for my good. And maybe I'm not accounted to be there, and that's fine. If there's things I have to overcome, that's all. I want to be in the kingdom. You know, it doesn't matter whether I'm in Sela or whether I'm anywhere. What matters is I'm in His kingdom. So I have to do whatever it takes. But that's why I'm urging you, if you want to be in His will, come out of commercial Babylon, which means all of it. Come out of it, and then Yahweh will bless you. But that's what He says. And how long? He'll nourish her 1,260 days. So we know it's roughly a 3.5 year period without an intercalendary year there. At least the month we're talking about. Revelation 14, 12, 14, just a few verses down. And 2 wings of a great eagle were given to the woman, that she might fly into the wilderness, to her place, where she is nourished there for a time, times and half a time, away from the serpent's face. And we're not really sure how much that is, because in verse 6, to be honest, is more historical. And the congregation in the wilderness, a day for a year principle, they were in the wilderness 1,260 years exactly. They went there after the Council of Laodicea by Constantine's nephew, Julian the Apostate. That's when the laws that Constantine made against Sabbath keeping and those things, even though he made them, they weren't so much enforced. When Julian came, they were enforced. You keep the Sabbath, you're going to get the death penalty. You're going to lose your house. So brethren had to flee. And that was the beginning of this prophecy in verse 6. And exactly from 360 AD, 1,260 years later, was exactly 1620, when the pilgrims are coming to the new land. Exactly. So that's how long they were in the wilderness. So here, though, in verse 14, where he says time, times and half a time could be a year, so it might be 3.5 years, but a time could also mean a season. And this could mean like a holy day season. So it could be like Passover is a time, it's a season. And then seasons, Shabbat and Sukkot is a season. And then half the time to the next one. So it could even be less than a year. We're not sure. It's hard to interpret it, so we don't know. Yahweh may do it for 3.5 years, but it could be as little as 7 to 9 months. You know, so prophetically thinking, we just have to be ready for both sides of that. So this is why the congregation must go to the wilderness. Just as Moses brought the Torah to Israelite society for the first time, and just as John the Baptist was sent to prepare the people for repentance, for the coming of Yeshua, the eternal Son of Elohim, and just as Yeshua went into the wilderness to prepare to bring the kingdom of Yahweh to the earth for the first time since Adam, we need to prepare to bring the literal kingdom of Yahweh and minister to the earth for the first time since the Garden of Eden. That's our whole job there. So, wow, how exciting. How exciting, right? That we're at the end of the 6,000 years. We've been chosen to do this job, and now all we have to do is get ready for it, just like any job that you're going to do. You know, like I see the beautiful young ladies here playing the violins, you know, and how beautiful it is. But, you know, I would bet you didn't just pick that up and start playing today. You had to practice. You had to learn it. You had to practice a long time and continue to practice. So it's the same with us. You know, we have to be practicing and learning what we need to be the first fruits on day one. Revelation 20, verse 4 to 6. This is after Yeshua returns. It says, "And I saw thrones, and they that sat on them, and judgment was given to them. And the souls of the ones having been beheaded because of the witness of Yeshua, and because of the word of Yahweh, and who had not worshipped the beast or its image," right? They didn't take the mark. They didn't worship the beast. They came out of commercial Babylon. "And they did not receive the mark on their forehead or in their hand." Why does he say that? Because the forehead is where your mind is. That's how you think. And the hand is what you do. Right? You have to get the thought before you do it. So that's what he's saying. It's in your mind and it's in your hand. So it's not something that they're just doing mindlessly like a robot. They're thinking about it, and it's part of them, you know? And it's in their hand, it's in their actions, or the proof of it. This is the first resurrection. They lived and reigned with Messiah for 1,000 years. The ones who didn't take the mark on the forehead and in their hand, this is the first resurrection. Blessed and holy is the one having part in the first resurrection. The second death will have no authority over these, but they will be priests of Yahweh and his Messiah, and will reign with him 1,000 years. king and priest. Wow. Wow, unbelievable to even think about it. Praise Yahweh for it. So, we know from Song of Solomon, I'm not going to go there, but Song of Solomon 1, verse 5 through 7, if you're taking notes, it talks about the bride goes into the wilderness black and comely. She's not ready when she goes to the wilderness. So, like us, you come into the communities and think about how much you've changed just in a little bit of time you're here. So we come into the community, not ready yet, but think about how day by day and month by month and year by year, think about how you're changing here. And it's only the beginning. So praise Yahweh for that. But when she comes out of the wilderness, she comes out without spot or blemish. I think I'll go there, Song of Solomon 4. Song of Solomon 4, right? In verse 20 says, "Behold, you are beautiful, my love." This is Yeshua talking to us, his bride. "Behold, you are beautiful, my love. Behold, you are beautiful. Your eyes are like doves from behind your veil. Your hair is like a flock of goats which lie down from Mount Gilead." Verse 7, "You are beautiful, my love. There is no blemish in you." Right? And we say in the New Testament, we have to get out every spot and blemish. We have to have white garments for the wedding supper. And that's only the wilderness can do that. Because the wilderness is a solitary place. And I can tell you, there's times like when we're in Israel, down in Kadesh Barnea, or we're down in the Negev, down in the wilderness down there. And it's not always fun. Because, the wilderness also it's very hot, and there's no water, and there's scorpions and whatnot. But there's a feeling in the wilderness that you don't get anywhere else. Because it's like it was creation 6,000 years ago. Man has not destroyed it. It's the same mountains. It's the same valleys. Nothing has changed there. And you feel Yahweh in the wilderness like you don't feel anywhere else. And he tells us, 1 John 15, he tells us we have to come out of the society. This isn't something just now. This is for the last 2,000 years. When someone becomes a believer in Yeshua, they should be separating from Satan's world of commercial Babylon, and coming out of that. So, 1 John 2 in verse 15. "Do not love the world, nor the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him." And if you don't love those things, why do you keep them? Why on earth would you keep it if you don't love it? You're not keeping it because it's harming you. And if you don't love it, then get rid of it. All these things of the world. Because all that's in the world, right? The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life. And I'll add in the smartphone, right? They're not of Yahweh. It's not of the Father, but it's of the world. Yahweh didn't create that stuff. And the world is passing away in its lust. I guarantee you there'll be no smartphones in the kingdom. But the one doing the will of Yahweh will abide forever. So these are the choices we have to make in our life. No one's going to make it for you. No one's going to force you. But the choices you make today will be where you will be tomorrow. This is what the wilderness is all about. It's about purifying ourselves. It's not about compromising and doing the minimal of change. It's about purifying ourselves and doing the most. Doing the most change. And the most change, you know what? Things like Facebook and smartphones, those are simple things. Those are easy things. Like when you became a believer, stop eating pork. That was the simplest thing in the world, It wasn't like I couldn't eat. I could still eat chicken. I could still eat beef. I had a lot of choices in my life. The hard part is changing this. The hard part is changing this. That's the hard part. But it's got to start somewhere. You got to start somewhere. And like it says, if you're not faithful in the little, you won't be faithful in much. So you've got to start with the little things and get up to the big things. Matthew 10 in verse 39. Verse 37 through 39. Matthew 10 verse 37 through 39. "The one loving the father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And the one loving son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever does not take up his torch or stake and follow after me is not worthy of me. The one finding his life will lose it, and the one losing his life on account of me will find it, right? That's the key. We have to lose our life in commercial Babylon. There's nothing there for us anyway, you know? And like I said, that's COVID to me was such the biggest blessing in my life because it showed me there is nothing outside there in that world that I want or I need. And I really wish, if I could, I would just go up to the top of a mountain and that would be it. I'd wait for the kingdom to come because there's nothing in that society I want, but I know it's not Yahweh's will. I know it's His will. There's still work to do. You know, so even though I have to go to the wilderness and separate, I still need to be doing the work of Yahweh. Still need to be coming to the congregations. I still need to be, you know, witnessing. Still need to be doing Matthew 24, but we have to do it from the wilderness. The same way, like I said, during the wilderness period, from like 1,000 to 1,500, there was more than 5 million believers that came to faith. You know, in France, in Italy, and all those areas that are over there, going all the way to the UK, Austria. You know, it was amazing the work they did, even though they were living in the wilderness, in the mountains, and away from society. They were still doing the work of Yahweh. We must lose our life in this world that's perishing. The most important thing to the early believers was to stay separate from the world, not to compromise. And many even died for this. So they didn't even want to be involved in certain jobs that might even tempt them. And that's why they were tailors, they were sewers. They didn't even want to take a job that possibly could tempt them in the world. But we have to have complete reliance on Yahweh. Revelation 14. Beautiful scripture. Revelation 14 and verse 1. And I saw and behold the Lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him were 144,000, with the names of the Father having been written in their foreheads. Right? That's why I said, the forehead is where you think, the hand is what you do. So you can either have the mind of the world, you know, of commercial Babylon and Satan, and then everything you do, the fruits, you'll know them by their fruits are going to be fruits of the world, or you can have the mind of Yahweh. And then all your fruits are going to be for the kingdom. Wow, look at what he's doing. They're feeding the poor. They're helping this. They're doing this. They're witnessing. You know, like elders get in contact with me. Recently, we just had a congregation of almost 400 people. It was in Africa that an elder, he witnessed to this elder who had a congregation, and the whole congregation came in, almost 400 people. That's fruit. So that's the key to it. That the 144,000 with the name of the Father in their foreheads. Go down to verse 4. These are the ones who had not become defiled. How are they defiled? Because they're not part of commercial Babylon. For they are pure. These are the ones following the Lamb wherever He goes. These were redeemed from among men, being first fruits to Yahweh and the Lamb. And no decoy was found in their mouth, right? I guarantee they didn't have internet. That's the biggest fake news you find in the world. And I don't know if it is the biblical, literal false prophet, but internet is a false prophet. Because all the fake news you have out there, you couldn't have it if it wasn't for the internet. If you didn't have the internet, you couldn't have fake news, because all of it comes through there. So no decoy was found in their mouth, for they are unmarked. They are unmarked before the throne of Yahweh. Unmarked before the throne of Yahweh. Like I said, it's the choice we have to make now. Because the wilderness is here. You know, I talked about it for years and years and years, but now we're living and now we're part of it. And Yahweh knows how long this will last. I don't believe it's 40 years. Hope it ain't. I don't see how it could be. But whatever it is, we have to embrace it, and we have to realize that if it probably isn't 40 years, we need to take every day and change. We need to be praying and studying and fasting and meditating and serving and changing. And we have to do it every day of our life. No decoy was found in their mouth, for they're unmarked before the throne of Yahweh. And they follow the Lamb wherever He goes, right? They're following the Lamb wherever He goes. What does that tell you? It tells you judicial order. It tells you they're certainly not on the side. They're part of the congregation, because when you look at sheep, and Yeshua said He is the great shepherd of the sheep, sheep are not on their own. There's a lot of things about sheep you could look at, but one thing is sheep do not go on their own. And if a sheep does wind up somehow going away on his own by mistake. Once he realizes it, he sits there like this, just crying, and may even starve to death because of how scared he is being on his own. And the shepherd's got to come and find him. But the sheep stay together. That's how you know that they're from the one shepherd. The sheep stay together. But we have to stay separate from the world. 2 Corinthians 6:16. In what harmony has the sanctuary of Elohim with idols? For you are the sanctuary of the living Elohim, as it said, I will dwell in them and walk among them. And I will be their Elohim, and you shall be my people. And here you are. Because of this, come out from among them. Come out from among them and be separated, says Yahweh, and do not touch the unclean thing, and I will receive you. And I will be a father to you, and you will be sons and daughters to me, says Yahweh Almighty. Wow, if there was ever a time that this scripture is there, it's now. Come out from among them. Come out of commercial Babylon. Jacob 1:27, pure, right? Pure Kadesh in holy service before Yahweh and the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. Right? If you're out of it, you'll be unspotted from it. If you're part of it, you won't. You have to be unspotted from the world. Psalm 95 in verse 6, we have to guard against the spirit of unbelief. Because that's the thing that stops us. And I wonder, think to yourself, meditate a little bit when you go home, of how many times you heard a sermon like this, and when you heard it, you were convicted to make a change, and then after you got home after a day or two, the conviction gets a little bit less and less and less. You know, it's like the person that maybe is, he comes in into a service, and he hears a message and he's convicted, and he says, well, I'm going to give $10,000, I'm going to give that, I'm so convicted. And then he gets home and he's like, yeah, I'm pretty convicted, I'm going to give that $8,000. And then like a couple of days later, he's like, oh yeah, well, when we meet next week, I'll give the $5,000. And then by the time he comes in the congregation, he's handing a $1 bill. Because the conviction can wane. And you don't want your faith to wane. You know, Yahweh says, when you make a conviction to Him, fulfill it quickly. You know, because He doesn't take pleasure in fools. And that's why when there's people sometimes come up to me and they say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to say, don't even tell me, just do it. You know, somebody at a meeting in U.S. one time, he had a very expensive, like a $50,000 car, and he came up to me, he was a doctor, and he said, I want to donate this car. And I said, don't even say it, because once you say it, you're bound by it. I said, if you're going to do it, and if not, then don't. Of course, he didn't. But once you commit to Yahweh, and then you don't do it, wow, you got troubles on your hand. Yahweh calls you a fool. So it's better, he says, not to commit that. But if you do commit, if you're convicted, then do it right away. When you're convicted of something, make that change right away, because the more time that goes by, every day that goes by, you're probably not going to do it. So Psalm 95, in verse 6, we have to guard against the spirit of unbelief. Oh, come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before Yahweh our Maker. For He is our Elohim. We are the people of His pasture and the sheep. Right? The sheep of His hand, not the goats. Today, if you will hear His voice, do not harden your heart, as in the day of strife, in the day of testing in the wilderness. When your fathers tried me, they tested me, and they saw my works. For 40 years I was disgusted with that generation. And I said, they are people who err in heart, and they do not know my ways. To whom I swore in my anger, they will not enter my rest. Right? The children of Israel, they didn't just lose out on the physical promised land. They lost out on the kingdom of Yahweh. You know? It's sad that all the great miracles Yahweh did, the greatest miracles Yahweh ever did was what happened in Egypt. Coming there physically, not needing an army, taking those people out through the plagues and everything. And in the end, only 2 people, 20 and above, made it to the promised land. That should really put something on our heart to make that commitment. And what I'm reading here is coming from Hebrews 3. You know, when he's saying it, he's warning us in the end time, don't be like that. And they didn't enter. Why? Because the spirit of unbelief. We don't want to have that spirit of unbelief. And you know what? If there is belief, faith without works is dead. There will always be an action. That's what faith is. Faith brings action. If there's no action, it's not faith. Jude 5, what I was just saying. Jude, the book of Judah. only one chapter, verse 5. But I intend to remind you through that once you knew these things, that Yahweh, having saved the people out of the land of Egypt, in the second place destroyed the ones not believing. Wow. And you think of that day when all of them were marching out of Egypt, you know, almost 2 million people with the children and the animals and all of their grain and taking all the spoils of Egypt, and how happy they were. And 40 years later, only 2 people going into the promised land. Wow. Luke 13, the path is narrow. I'm not going to lie to you. You know, there's a lot of these false churches out there. They teach the law's done away with, this and that, and they're giving people a one-way ticket to the lake of fire. And then they try to say, in the end time, everybody will be saved. I don't know what they're reading, but in my Bible, it never says that. It says the opposite. So let me read you here, Luke 13, in verse 23. And a man asked Yeshua, very simple question. This isn't one of those parables that's hard to figure out, right? Very simple question. Master, are the ones being saved few? Everybody understand that, right? Are the ones being saved few? But Yeshua said to them, labor to enter in through the narrow gate. For I say to you, many will seek to enter and will not have strength. Many will seek to enter and will not have strength. Matthew 7 says the same thing. 7:13. Go in through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and many are the ones entering in through it. But narrow is the gate and constricted is the way that leads to life, and few are the ones finding it. So while only Yahweh knows that number, but why take a chance? Why take a chance with your eternal life? Like I said, this life is so short. Satan is totally in control of this world out there. It's so evil, the things that does. Human nature is at its worst. We're living in the days of Noah. We're living in the days of Sodom and Gomorrah, what they're doing. There's nothing out there for us. So why play Russian roulette with your spiritual life? Why not take those gifts that Yahweh has given you? Why not use every day that you have alive to work for His kingdom? Take serious being an ambassador for Him? Be a fruit for His kingdom, serve as all you can, and then get eternal life. Right? It's one way or the other. One way or the other. And in the end time, you know, like I said, who knows what's going to happen to us? Only Yahweh. But if we are faithful, one way or the other, Yahweh will protect us and we will make it into His kingdom. Proverbs 3. Last 2 scriptures we'll go into here. Proverbs 3. One through 7, then I'll drop down to verse 22. My son, do not forget my Torah, but let your heart guard and keep my commandments, and they shall add length of days and long life and peace to you. Mercy and truth will not forsake you. Tie them on your neck, write them on the tablet of your heart, and you will find favor and good understanding in the sight of Elohim and man. Trust in Yahweh with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths, right? The road is narrow, it's constricted. Acknowledge Him in all your ways, and He will direct that path. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear Yahweh and depart from evil. Drop down to verse 22. And they shall be life to your soul and grace to your neck. Then you will walk in your way safely, and your foot will not stumble. When you lie down, you will not dread. When you lie down, and your sleep shall be sweet. Do not be afraid of sudden terror, nor of the destruction of the wicked when it comes. For Yahweh shall be at your side, and He will keep your foot from being caught. So, wow. This is what Yahweh says to the people. And the last scripture I'm going to read here is Isaiah 48. Isaiah 48, 20 through 22. He says, go out of Babylon. And that's physical and commercial, you know, for years, because, you know, people understand America, the land of America, as Babylon. I think a lot of the foreign brethren are, at least I don't have to live there. But commercial Babylon is even worse than physical Babylon. And He's calling all of us to come out of that. Go out of Babylon, flee from the Chaldeans. Tell this with the voice of rejoicing. Let it be heard. Let it go out to the ends of the earth, right? Say, Yahweh has redeemed His servant Jacob. That's what it's about, the redemption of the tribes. and they did not thirst. He led them in the deserts. He made waters flow out of the rock from them. We just came from there. We just saw the Mount and the rock at Hor. And he cut open the rock and water gushed out. There is no peace, says Yahweh, to the wicked. So, wow. After almost 6,000 years, here we are. The wilderness is here, the end-time wilderness. And I hope, as well as myself, I hope you embrace this time. Because like I said, every day that goes by is one day less to Yahweh's kingdom. We have no idea. Yahweh only knows the day and the hour, but we do know the times and the seasons. And we are in those times and seasons. We are counting down to the kingdom of Yahweh. But it's not just a countdown. We have to prepare, we have to get ready, because we are His kings and His priests for that kingdom. And we've got to be ready for day one. So may Yahweh bless the Philippines and bless the work in the Philippines. May He bless the elders in the Philippines. May He bless the brethren and the women and the men in the Philippines. May He bless the little children in the Philippines. And may He have His Spirit and His shalom shine down on you. And may Yahweh just give you all the abundance of your heart as you live here in this kibbutz. And may He just shine on you tremendously and give you all of His blessings in life. Amen. Yahweh bless. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Elder God, for that very powerful and inspiring message about